One of the other trigonomic functions we're going to be going over is sine. You have to say it like it's a sine, even though it's not spelled that way. And what we're going to do is we're going to draw a right triangle, which is drawn for you, and we're going to label. So sine is going to be comparing the sides that are opposite over hypotenuse. All right, so let's first start by just identifying angle A. Circle it. You'll notice that the side opposite of angle A is BC. So we're going to fill this in. Leg opposite angle A is BC. Now this isn't actually a leg since it's the hypotenuse, so I'm actually going to write this. Shouldn't be leg here. It actually should be the hypotenuse, which remember, if you forgot what hypotenuse is, that's the side opposite the right angle. Okay, so it's going to be the hypotenuse of angle, well, it's 90 degrees, right? That right angle. Or angle C in this case, but it's 90 degrees. And that would be side AB. If at any point you need to pause, please feel free to do so. But I'm going to kind of explain right along to the next one, sine of angle A. Now I know that they only give you one picture, so if you do have to erase and what's the word I'm looking for? Relabel, you can do that. This time we're going to use sine of B. So I'm going to circle B. And that's going to be side opposite of angle B. And that side is AC. Now this is not really a leg, because remember, sine is going to be opposite over hypotenuse. So remember that side hypotenuse, it's the opposite that 90 degrees. So we're going to write it's the hypotenuse of angle, I know it's labeled angle C, but that 90 degree angle, it's right there. And that would be side AB. One last trig function that we're going to see is cosine, which is comparing our adjacent side to our hypotenuse side. So let's go ahead and circle angle A. And remember, adjacent is just a fancy word for right next door. So the side next door to angle A would be AC. It's right next to A. And then remember, it's not going to be leg, but it's going to be the side hypotenuse to the 90 degree angle, even though I know it's labeled C. And that's going to be side AB. Again, if you need to re-erase that picture for the labels, because we're going to move on to cosine of B. So again, that's going to be angle B, so let's go ahead and circle B. Side opposite, side adjacent, my bad, to angle B, which is right next door, would be side BC. And then remember, this is not leg, but hypotenuse, and my hypotenuse would be side opposite 90 degrees, which is hypotenuse of that 90 degree angle, and that would be side AB. Right, keep that as a reference on for your tests. We're going to move along on how do we apply these brand new trig functions. So the first thing they're going to ask us to do is to find the sine and cosine of angle C. So let's go ahead and by circling C, let's go ahead and identify the opposite and hypotenuse. Take some time, pause if you need to, but try and figure out which one's opposite, which one's hypotenuse. And unpause. That would be about 16 is my opposite side, whereas 25 is my hypotenuse. And for cosine of C, we're going to circle that same angle. This time we're going to be identifying our adjacent side and our hypotenuse side. So that would be adjacent over hypotenuse, which would be 20 over 25. All right, moving right along. Sine of C would be, we'll circle C, and that would be side opposite over hypotenuse, which would be rad 5 over 3. Again, if you need to erase, do the next one, which is cosine of C. So that would be the adjacent side, which is the number 2, or CB, and the hypotenuse side, which is 3. So that'd be 2 over 3. Again, if at any point you need to pause before I go over a problem, please try it out. All right, now we're going to go into a word problem. They do give us a picture, which is kind of nice. So here it says, suppose there's a new regulation that states the maximum angle for a wheelchair ramp for wheelchairs is 8 degrees. And if you ever had to push a wheelchair, you want that ramp to be kind of not at a very steep angle and kind of long, so that way it doesn't take that much effort to push that up or to go up that. So it has to be 8 degrees. The wall's about 2.3 feet off the ground, and they want to know how long the ramp has to be. So they want to find that. So what we're going to do is we're going to identify, okay, well, which one do I use? Sine or cosine, right? So here they give me this angle, and I know that this side here is opposite or adjacent? Opposite, right? And then this side here, since it's opposite my 90 degree, would be my hypotenuse. So if it's opposite over hypotenuse, which of these two would I use? Sine, right? So on our work, we're going to go ahead and set up sine. Angle would go, opposite over hypotenuse, right? Angle 8. Hypotenuse. So that would be angle 8 over 2.3 over z. So I'm going to recopy that fraction down. Go ahead and figure out what sine of 8 is. And that would be about 0.139. We're going to put a 1 underneath it, and we're going to cross multiply. So 1 times 2.3 and 0.139 times z. And that would be about 2.3 and 0.139. Let's do the opposite of multiplying, which is what? What's the opposite of multiplying? Dividing! So we're going to divide both sides by that 0.139. That goes away. And take a minute, calculate what z would be. That would be about 16.5. So it has to be about 16.5 feet long. So on here where it goes on explain 4, it says draw and label a right triangle that you would need to use the inverse trig ratio. So remember back in tangent, when we use inverse of tangent, let's say they just give me the side lengths. So it says, shows my picture, let's say I have 2 sides, but I don't know the angle. I would need to find that, right? So I would need to use the inverse of sine or cosine to find the angle if I don't know it. All right, moving right along. Let's actually practice doing that. So let's say they want us to find the angle y, and I need to figure out whether I'm going to use sine or cosine. So here I'll notice that I have my hypotenuse. Well, that doesn't help me out because they both use hypotenuse, right? But number 14, this side right here, is that opposite y or is that right next door? It's actually right next door. So am I going to use sine or cosine? Cosine. So let's go ahead and set up our ratio. Let's put stuff in their appropriate places. That would be angle y, and 14 over 23. Opposite of cosine, just so you know, is inverse cosine. So we're going to take the inverse cosine of y and the inverse cosine of this fraction. You'll find that cosine is actually the button here, and they'll be right above it will be cosine inverse. You'll have to use your calculator to kind of calculate that out, and ask your supervising teacher, tutor, math teacher, any one of our staff members, and we will help you find that on our graphing calculator to work that out. But you'll notice the cosines go away, cancel out. I'm left with y equals, calculate it out, about 52.5. And you can round it if you want to the nearest degree, just like the directions say for those of you who read them. Yes, that would be about 53 degrees. Okay. Moving right along, let's find the angle z. So again, I'm going to circle it. And I see that they give me a side that is hypotenuse, right? And the side that's opposite. So which one will I use, sine or cosine? Sine, right? So we'll go ahead and set that up, put the numbers in their place. Variables 2. All right, just so you know that the inverse of sine, if I want to take the opposite of sine, is sine inverse. So we'll take that of this side and this side. And again, if you need some help figuring out how do I find inverse sine on your calculator, ask. We will help. All right, again, we can leave it like that. We can also round it to the nearest degree, just like the directions say, round it to the nearest degree, which would be about 37 degrees. Okay? We're finally to the checkpoint. We're almost there. It says find the unknown value for x to the nearest tenth. So again, I have an angle. I have a side that's opposite, side that's hypotenuse. So will I use sine or cosine? Pause, figure it out, and unpause. It should be about sine. So sine is the one we're going to use, and that's going to be putting everything in their place. So sine of 24, 19 over x. I'm going to write down that fraction one more time. Takes a minute, and go ahead and find out what the sine of 24 is. We're going to write that with a 1 underneath it. We're going to cross multiply 1 times 19 and 0.406 times x. We're going to get rid of that 0.406 by dividing. That cancels out, and I'm left with x equals, calculate it out, about 46.7. All right, the next one we're going to do is finding angle u. So they give me a side for u, not u specifically, but for the letter u, right? Opposite, and the side hypotenuse. So am I going to use sine or cosine? We're going to use sine. All right, let's label some stuff, put stuff in their place. And for this one, since I need to find this angle, we're actually going to take the inverse of sine for both sides and take a minute, find out what angle u would be using your calculator. And that should be about 47.1. So either one, yeah. And last but not least, go ahead and identify your angle W and figure out if it's going to be sine or cosine. Go ahead and take some time to label. And let's finish this out. Adjacent, hypotenuse, so I am going to use cosine. put the numbers in their place. And since we are trying to find the angle, W, we're going to take the inverse of cosine. Take some time to figure that out. Pause if you need to. But it should be about that. And I could round it to the nearest degree. Alright, take some time to do the homework. If you have questions, need additional support, please feel free to go ahead and ask. Any one of our staff members will definitely help you out. Join us back for the last two sections, 13.3, 13.4. You're halfway there. We can do this. We got this. I know you can do it.